You better be worth the money, Merc. Every last gil.
Hold on to your oversized swords because there is a ton of new Final Fantasy VII Remake info coming your way. We recently got to play multiple new sections, spanning from the very start of the game to both reactor bombings and fighting Airbuster, to meeting Aerith for the very first time, to fighting Abzu in the sewers with both Aerith and Tifa. Individually, these were very brief slices of how the game as a whole will play, but they still gave us detailed glimpses of unseen mechanics and reworked story details. So without further ado, and with a not insignificant spoiler warning for those wanting to go into the remake totally fresh, here are 17 exciting new details we picked up on after playing an extended chunk of the Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Get him!
Halt! Who goes there?
You're up.
The first playable section we got our hands on was the very start of the game, which switches into gear the second Cloud gets off the train at the Sector 1 reactor. This scene will of course be familiar to fans of the original, and one detail worth noticing here is that not 30 seconds after you get off the train and have your very first fight, you can stop and spot a reference to Final Fantasy VII PSP prequel/spin-off Crisis Core. These posters, which could be spotted in an earlier FF7R trailer but can be seen properly here, advertise Banora White apple juice. Banora White, or Dumb Apples, were constantly referenced in Crisis Core by its major characters, first-class soldiers Genesis, Angeal, and Sephiroth. It's interesting the Crisis Core would be alluded to so early in the Final Fantasy VII Remake, basically confirming its extended lore. That lore is disregarded by some fans, who speculated it would be left out of the remake entirely. So these posters do make us wonder if they're the only reference to Crisis Core and its characters, or will they be worked into the remake in more meaningful ways?
So what's Soldier Boy's deal? Is he one of us now? He's got balls, this, what was his name again?
Cloud Strife.
Right.
And he isn't a soldier anymore. Still, he's a professional, unlike the rest of us. I'm glad to have him.
Most of the rest of this gameplay segment, the lead up to the Guard Scorpion fight, has been seen before, but what is worth noting is that it goes to great lengths to make Biggs, Wedge and Jessie fully rounded, likeable characters. Not that they weren't before, of course, but the remake ensures that you interact with each one of them individually between story beats, emphasizing Cloud's aloof attitude and their starry-eyed idealism. The game also eases you into combat as you fight solely as Cloud, mixing up regular attacks while building your ATB gauges, and then spending those to use spells and abilities while moving yourself around the battlefield. It's a relatively gentle introduction before things get complicated as additional party members, abilities, materia, spells, and summons get added on down the line. But more on that later.
Calling fire.
Come on, Cloud!
Pick up the pace.
This early section we won't dwell on too much as it's been seen before, but one section we haven't properly seen yet is when Jessie asks Cloud about Tifa. Another spoiler warning if you don't wish to see it yet, but Jessie asks him whether they were close, and Cloud thinks back to their childhood in Nibelheim.
Cloud! Are you ignoring me?
Tifa and I...
Of course, the question of whether Cloud and Tifa were close is part of a much bigger mystery for later on in the game, so this is a nice bit of very early foreshadowing. There were a few more Nibelheim flashbacks during our overall time with the game, some including a very specific cowgirl outfit. Though we were sadly unable to capture those moments, you'll be able to see them for yourself in the not too distant future.
What about the timer?
Your call, Merc.
When it comes to setting the bomb for the Sector 1 reactor, you get to choose whether to put the timer at 20 minutes or 30 minutes. Once you defeat the guard scorpion, it will inadvertently start the clock in its death throes, giving you the allotted time to escape the reactor. However, you'll have to push through Shinra guards, sweepers, and shock troopers, which are all a little more challenging than you might remember them being. Once you escape and Avalanche's relatively minor bomb goes off, President Shinra and Heidegger will press the self-destruct button on the whole reactor, framing our heroes for a much bigger and more deadly explosion that has a knock-on effect to the whole sector. This act is notable in that it is actively downgrading Avalanche's blame in the devastation of the bombing as a whole.
The entire sector hazardous.
After this incident, the group will split up, and this will be your first opportunity to explore the streets of Midgar as you push through the rubble, climb over buildings, duck down some alleyways, have a brief cutscene encounter with the ghost of Sephiroth, and wind up on Loveless Street in Sector 8. Fighting through the blockades on these streets is where you'll first start to pick up independent materia. We found a HP Plus and a new one called Deadly Dodge, which seemingly allowed for an additional counter after successfully avoiding an enemy's attack.
Look up!
Sectors 1
I
and
said
2.
look up! Not that way, right!
Are at high risk
Careful
of
up here.
collapse.
This could collapse at any moment. If you want up, you'll have to use those stairs.
Aside from the excitement of seeing Sector 8 from this brand new perspective, it was also really interesting how these scenes made the bombing feel more real and devastating, because you're seeing the people of Midgar reacting to it in real time. Then you'll end up on Loveless Street, and it's time for an encounter that will change everything. Though we weren't allowed to capture the moment that Cloud and Aerith meet, we've seen glimpses of it in recent trailers. But what the trailer doesn't show is that this encounter plays out like in the original game, in that you get to choose how Cloud will react to Aerith. She'll offer you a flyer, of course, and you can choose to reply with either "I'm good" or "How much?" Both pretty standoffish, of course, because this is early game Cloud we're talking about. After replying with "I'm good, sorry, I'm a Tifa girl," Aerith will insist she gives it to you for free, after which you can again reply with either "Don't be stupid" or "Fine, I'll take it." Ever the charmer, Cloud. Aerith will give you the flyer anyway, but it's here that those weird hooded ghost-like figures will attack and swarm around her. Cloud can't actually see them until Aerith reaches out and touches him, and it's at that point that Shinra guards come to apprehend them, and it turns out they can't see the hooded figures at all either, even as they're swarming all around them. It does feel like these figures are perhaps a reimagined version of unfortunate souls destined for a reunion. Or maybe they have some connection to a corrupted life stream. But either way, it seems like the fact that they cannot be seen by certain people will be important to the story later on. Anyway, Aerith runs off after that, and Cloud makes his way to the iconic Sector 8 fountain for another round of battles, which introduces new Shinra enemies equipped with riot shields they need magic or quick maneuvering to bring down. This all culminates in a sort of mini-boss fight against a tough Shinra guard called the Huntsman. Once he's subdued, Cloud will once again be surrounded by another wave of guards, but luckily, he finds himself on a railway bridge and there seems to be a train coming. Fans of the original game will know exactly what happens next, and rest assured, it looks just as cool as you hope it will.
Enough.
Snub-nosed punk!
Kinda scary, huh?
It's all in the mind.
At this point, we're jumped forward in the game to inside the Sector 5 reactor, and this time, Both Barret and Tifa are in our party. This entire section has been expanded on from the original, in that Shinra warn you up front that you're about to be made an example of and executed on live TV by their new Airbuster weapon. The good news is the Airbuster model you're about to face hasn't been quite finished yet, and you just so happen to be moving through the control rooms responsible for putting it together. So, you'll be able to find key cards that you can spend at specific consoles to mark different components of the Airbuster as faulty and thus have them shipped off for disposal. You can choose which components get removed, but you can't get rid of all of them. So, will you cut down on the number of big bomber cores it receives, limiting the number of times it can use its big attack? Or will you remove its AI programming cores or its M units, limiting its mobility or its ability to fight you effectively? It's an interesting way to allow players to prepare for the upcoming fight and give themselves an edge against Shinra that complements their own playstyle.
You think they're watching us?
I won't give up.
You'll still have to fight a number of Shinra troops and machines to get through this section though, and it's here we got to experiment with Tifa's gameplay for the first time. In keeping with her extensive martial arts training thanks to the great Zangan, she has tons of abilities at her disposal, many of which feed into one another to increase her stats and build up combos, likely a reference to how her limit break slots worked in the original. For example, her unbridled strength and overpower abilities will increase the effectiveness of basic attacks, and her Star Shower ability will unleash an incredible looking chain of strikes that will then increase the attack power of any next move she executes. The result is an amazing looking display of flips, kicks and punches that make her playstyle distinctive from both Cloud and Barret. They both had unlocked new abilities at this point in the game too. Cloud had new moves called Triple Slash, Infinity's End and Blade Burst, the latter of which gave him a semi-ranged attack. Barret had Lifesaver, which would allow him to take damage intended for someone else in the party, Maximum Fury, which consumes all of your ATB charges to fire a long stream of bullets at an enemy, and Point Blank, which unleashes a powerful up-close attack. It was really fun to flip between all three as new ATB charges became available, trying out the new moves and seeing what was effective at pressuring and staggering enemies, the key to a stylish win. Our magic options had also opened up a little more. Once a materia has leveled up, you'll need to press right on the D-pad in the magic menu for said spell to select the more powerful attack, like Fyra and Cura. And you will need to keep an eye on your health because even at this early stage with a lot of weapons, armor and abilities at our disposal, basic foes aren't exactly a pushover. Speaking of weapons and armor too, Final Fantasy VII fans will be delighted at the detail that's gone into the weapon, armor and materia menus, with pictures of each accompanied by flavor text and breakdowns of their stats. We couldn't capture any of this and you'll probably enjoy finding and reading it all for yourself anyway, but for example, the text accompanying Cloud's iconic Buster Sword reads that it was instilled with the hopes of those who fight, which was a nice little nod to the weapon's history. There's plenty of new materia to get your head around too, and some new weapons as well, including a pair of feathered gloves for Tifa that you can see equipped here. There's a brief but fun little callback to the often frustrating simultaneous button pressing you had to do to open doors in the original game, where Cloud and Barret will have to follow Tifa's lead to open the way forward. You can also optionally open another door to the waste disposal room, where all those supposedly faulty Airbuster parts will have been sent. You can steal these yourself for the upcoming fight, and we highly recommend that you do so, even if you will have to push and pull a few more levers to get there.
Score. It's just like Cloud said.
They say a job well done is on reward. I say take everything that ain't nailed down.
Are you alright?
I'm fine.
However you choose to customize it, the Airbuster fight is a tough one. So before you initiate it, there's a vending machine where you can buy items, materia and other odds and ends. Beside that vending machine is a bench that subtly features the original game's save symbol, and sitting on this bench will handily replenish your entire party's HP and MP. No tents necessary. We opted to remove all of the Airbuster's big bomber cores and reduce its AI programming. But even so, this was a fight that really pushes you to stay on your toes and utilize the strengths of each member of your party. This fight also confirmed that summons are contextual in the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Even though each of our party members had a summon materia equipped for this entire playable section, Ifrit, Shiva and Leviathan, we were only able to choose one to summon at a specific point during the Airbuster fight. You can decide which one of them you want to bring forth, and after that you can let them do their own thing or spend your ATB charges to give more specific commands.
Get him!
Up until the timer runs out and they perform their finishing move. This will probably be a little disappointing to some players that want a bit more control in how summoning works, but it does make sense in the context of the world, meaning you can only have summons in places where they'd actually fit, for example, or making sure that you aren't summoning a hugely powerful being on a lowly Shinra guard. We just hope the system will be a little bit more transparent and flexible than Final Fantasy XV's controversial summon system that meant some players never got to see certain summons at all, as their incredibly specific conditions were never met. At any rate, summons in general weren't available at this point in the original game, so it seems that the remake is taking a very different route with them. Leviathan was very fun to watch in action, however, and there's no denying that having summons appear only in your time of need makes their contribution to battles all the more meaningful. All that said, in some recent screenshots of the game, you can see optional summons Carbuncle, Chocobo Chick and Cactuar, available only when you pre-order the game, fighting against more run-of-the-mill enemies, so maybe there is some wiggle room to when summons become available. Or maybe it depends on the size of the summon itself, and whether you're fighting in a space big enough to accommodate them.
Suck on me! Bringing the heat!
One other thing we noted in the Sector 5 reactor section was how the tone of dialogue had shifted from the earlier segment. Cloud and Barrett were notably more relaxed and friendly towards one another, and as the team banded together against the upcoming fight against Shinra, there were some genuinely funny moments. There has been some criticism levelled against the voice acting in the remake, and not without good reason, but it definitely seemed less stilted and more natural the more time the party spent with one another, and it was nice to see those relationships develop, even in the short amount of time we spent with them. With that, we jumped forward in time yet again to the sewers beneath Don Corneo's mansion, where Cloud, Tifa and Aerith had just fallen. True to the original, you'll control Cloud as he picks himself up from the fall, and you'll see Aerith and Tifa lying out in front of you. You'll have to choose which girl to check on first, surely adding to the earlier dialogue options with Aerith's flower in feeding into the affection system that will determine the outcome of Cloud's love triangle. We checked on Tifa first, and she makes a point of asking you what the relationship is between you and Aerith. But maybe that conversation can wait until after you've dealt with Don Corneo's pet, Abzu, called Apps in the original English language version of the game, likely thanks to a mistranslation.
Hope you're ready.
Let me
As Abzu was the third boss fight we had faced in this gameplay demo, it was good to note that each of these battles had its own distinct ebb and flow. The team compositions were different, which definitely helped, but more than that, combat is always varied and always exciting. Most importantly, it feels like what you're doing really makes a difference. Unlike in Final Fantasy XV, where it felt like you could just basic attack over and over again until an enemy was downed. In these battles, you really need to exploit elemental weaknesses, pile on the pressure from multiple different angles, and play to each character's strength. There is always something to do, whether you're switching between characters or issuing commands. It's about ensuring you're making everyone count. And not only that, you've now got to be aware of your placement on the battlefield too, as moves like Abzu's Sewer Tsunami will deal significant damage if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. There are other nice details to note too, like the fact that an enemy's move will be highlighted above their head as they're performing it, and that if you set fire to Abzu, he'll roll around on the ground or throw himself in the water trying to put it out. The takeaway is that these fights really feel like big events, especially when you get summons involved. It all flows beautifully and seamlessly, with fights feeling almost like a choreographed sequence where a wrong direction from you can be devastating, but quick thinking and flashy finishers can feel incredibly satisfying.
It's on you. I'm coming.
The fight with Abzu is where we got to control Aerith's combat for the first time, and again, her role in battle feels appropriately different to anyone else's. Her extensive abilities include Soul Drain, where she unleashes an attack that absorbs MP and additional MP from staggered enemies, Arcane Wind, Sorcerous Storm, Fleeting Familiar, which conjures a magical butterfly to temporarily fight for you, Ray of Judgment, Lustrous Shield, which summons a magical shield that keeps enemies at bay and stops projectiles, ATB Ward, which means allies who use ATB within its radius regain partial ATB from your gauge, and Prey, which acts a little bit like original Limit Break Healing Wind in that it restores a small amount of HP to all party members. Although some of her abilities are offensive, Aerith's moves take some time to perform, which is why she's definitely better used in a defensive and healing capacity, staying far back from the action while others deal damage. It's a nice counterbalance to Cloud and Tifa's roles in this fight, as they get up close and personal with Abzu, occasionally flinging magic his way as he speeds around the battlefield. The combat really is a huge amount of fun, and we'd be lying if we said we weren't keen to keep playing and experimenting, as the demo ended when Abzu escaped at the end of our battle, seemingly living to fight another day. Interesting.
Keep it together.
I got this. This one's for you.
What struck us most after our time with the game was that even though the sections we played through were rather linear in nature, perhaps owing to the limited time in which we had to play them, the game does try to give the player freedom to customize their experience where possible, via extensive materia and weapon menus, through to the all-important dialogue options where players can declare their devotion to Aerith, Tifa, or maybe even neither, if you so choose. It'll come as no surprise to anyone that watches this channel that we are huge Final Fantasy VII fans, but playing through this extended demo, it is apparent that Square Enix are making efforts to modernize and update both the gameplay and the story of the original, making it accessible to newcomers as well as old school fans who will appreciate that much of what made the original special, the characters, the enemy designs, the setting, has been left intact where it matters most. Although the Final Fantasy VII Remake is still playing coy on how more open sections of the game will work, in playing through these specific story beats, we were left both impressed and very much excited for what's to come.
No holding back. Let's finish this.
Oh, fine. After you, girl.
Gotta get past level 1 first, right? 3, 2, 1.
Alpha level security disengaged.
Just in case you're new around here, you can check out one of the many other Final Fantasy VII videos we have on the channel by clicking on one on screen now, including the almost finished saga of myself and Zoe playing through the entirety of the original game. Stay subscribed to Eurogamer as more Final Fantasy VII Remake videos will be coming very soon, and we'll see you in Midgar. Bye!